Good evening, everyone. Let me call to order this special meeting of the West Palm Beach Community Redevelopment Agency. Today is November 15th, 2021, and the time is 4:30. We do only have a single item on the agenda, so let me get right to it. Resolution number 21-69, granting an extension of time for obtaining governmental approvals under the ground lease with Cohen Brothers Realty Corporation of Florida, LLC, regarding the development of the tent site to be known as West Palm Point. Mr. Rugg.
Good evening, Mayor, City Commissioners. Chris Rugg, Executive Director of the Community Redevelopment Agency. Gina Baker will be running the PowerPoint from the podium, and just have a few slides just to kind of give you a quick summary of the item on the agenda tonight. Next. So just go over a brief overview, and this is just for anybody that's watching at home, just to give a general idea of location and time frame and what we're looking at. I do have a quick update on some of the work that has happened since our last meeting where we discussed this item, and then happy to answer any questions that you may have. So the tent site is a very important parcel that is right in the middle of our downtown, and it is wedged between several major corridors that run through the heart of the central business district of downtown. So we are looking at the top is east facing, and the left of the screen is north. So Woodlawn Cemetery is to the south, Rosemary Square is just to the west. Northeast is the Community Foundation, and then Palm Beach Atlantic University is to the southeast. Just to give some bearings with the tent site right in the middle of all of those things. And you can see just the summary of the location. Next. So several things have happened over the course of the last year, and I won't go into each of these, but if you look down at the bottom was the last meeting that we had on November 1st, where the revised concept plan was brought forward to the board and not approved. So we are continuing to work in that direction. Today we are voting on that time extension, which I'll talk about here in a moment. And then we all are planning on, at the next CRA meeting, we are scheduled to get an update and further discussion on that concept plan on December 13th. Next. So the request was from Cohen Brothers, which we currently have the ground lease with, requesting that 6-month extension to get the government approvals for the One West Palm development project. So if you review or if you look back into the ground lease, there is an item in the ground lease that is in Exhibit C that lays out sort of the schedule, and concept plan is first, and then shortly after they have a time frame to submit their government approvals, and then ultimately to achieve those government approvals. And so concept plan was submitted on August 10th. Shortly thereafter, the government application was submitted on December 8th. And so if, according to the schedule in the ground lease, if the extension is not granted today, then we would go past that 12-month time frame at which they need to achieve those government approvals, and that would cause a default of the ground lease. Hence the request in order to have that ground lease extended today. So go back.
I'm sorry.
Let me just talk a little bit more about that. So by extending the, one more, Gina.
All right, hold on. All right, sorry about that.
So the CRA can grant the 6-month extension to the ground lease, and that would push the government approval deadline to June 8th, 2021. So I did want to take an opportunity, in addition to just talking generally about the request that is before you today in the resolution for the extension, that there is what I consider to be progress with the project and working with the leasee's team, specifically the architects. Since November 1st, we've had several meetings with them, phone calls, and also Zoom meetings where I think that they've been very productive. It's in addition to myself, The Deputy Director of the CRA, Valerie, has been part of those conversations, as well as representatives from Development Services. And each time we do get into specifics about things that can improve the overall design, specifically of the garage, but then also challenging the architect to come up with fundamental changes and significant redesigns that I believe this board is expecting to be brought forward in the future. So we are sharing more information with them, things like the Public Realm Public Life Survey, which is something that really lays out just general principles of items that we're trying to achieve in our downtown. You may be familiar with this document because it was sort of that first step in the redesign of Clematis Street. Also, because of the Deputy Director's familiarity with regional planning, we've shared some regional transportation plans and ideas with them as well, because some of the aspects that you all had discussed was about trying to address more mobility. And then in addition, sharing just general traffic data and other important information that we think could improve and just inform the overall project to make it better. So with all of this, I mean, I can't help but feel very optimistic about the way that the discussions are going, and haven't seen any new drawings because they are still sort of in the creative process. But so far, so good. And, I think that based on all of that, the 6-month extension is warranted, and we should continue to move forward. With that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Very good. Any questions of staff? Commissioner Schoaf?
Thank you, Mayor. And Chris, I just want to make sure I clarify what I think I heard from you as well. I think the feedback that I heard from this board was that we were expecting something significantly different, specifically on the garage front. So this time, it looks like the timeline will be December the 13th. We'll see an updated concept plan, and then the 6-month extension will be to potentially get the governmental approvals on whatever that approved concept plan would be.
Correct.
But there is a commitment for something significantly different than what we've seen.
Yes, and I've said that several times to the architect, that it does need to be significantly different. And even more so is trying to present not only something that is significantly different, but several things that are significantly different, meaning choices, different options that the garage could go in. The architect has shared ideas of other garages from around the world, just to try to get an idea of where they think, where they think the board was heading, which I think were productive, because there were some that I could say on face value were just non-starters, because it seemed to be more of the same, didn't have a lot of active uses, things like that. But then there were some that showed more of a blend between the street and more of a soft edge with the garage that I think was more in line with a lot of the comments and things that I've heard from this board. So I think those discussions were helpful in having those discussions over images that I think just convey ideas. And so again, felt pretty hopeful about those discussions with the architect.
Thank you.
Commissioner Lambert.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Roog. I'm pleased to hear that we have an opportunity to continue this project, and I am in favor of extending this by 6 months, knowing that we are working together to find a solution that we can all agree upon. And I too want to see significant changes in the garage, but I am interested in something that you said about the information now that we have a new deputy director related to traffic engineering and traffic management. So can you tell me a little bit more about what we can, expect as far as staff giving information in this area? Because I just wasn't sure that that was still able to be negotiated or discussed in this time.
Well, so Commissioner, let me just, when we share, we're trying to share with them as much background information that I think was, that sort of conveys, I think, where the board wanted to see the overall design go originally. So when we shared information that we thought would be helpful for the architect to understand, that's why we shared those other documents with them. Don't get me wrong, I mean, it's when they talk about mobility, I mean, it's not a full design where we're, going headlong into creating, some type of large transportation hub. We're not going in that direction, let me be clear with that. But I think that there are other things that they're going to reassess, like potential bike share locations and things like that, that I think maybe weren't necessarily called out in the original concept plan, that will be a little bit more specific. But Valerie, I don't know if you want to add anything additional that maybe we added in the overall information that we shared with them, but generally it's just good to reiterate the importance of mobility as it relates to this project and doing whatever we can to try to address the ease of people moving around, like explaining where our train stations are and the close proximity to those Bright Line stations and how we can get people to and from there, and the potential of anticipating trolleys, which a lot of, when we speak with the architect, a lot of those aspects they had already built into the plan. But as we talk about softening the edges, maybe we need to rethink sort of the location of some of those items. But generally speaking, I think it's just good to convey the importance of making sure that we have mobility solutions in the project, and they are very intentional. But Valerie, do you have anything that you want to add?
Good afternoon. No, Chris, you covered it really well. I brought the perspective
Valerie,
of...
state your name for the record, please.
Good afternoon. Valerie Nielsen, Deputy Director at the CRA, West Palm Beach CRA. I brought more of the regional perspective in terms of this is a really key location regionally at the crossroads of Okeechobee, major east-west, and US 1, major north-south route, both FDOT roads, which the TPA is doing regional studies in terms of transportation, in terms of improving transit, pedestrian and bicycle facilities, and those are plans that if you look at the roadway now and you stand at the property, you might say, this is not a walkable environment. Why would we cater to these roads when I wouldn't want to walk or bike along them today? But there are plans and there are prioritized funds to improve those roadways. So as Chris mentioned, we basically shared those plans, we shared that vision and those other things that are happening around this property to take into consideration. For example, trying to make the sidewalks around the property be 12 feet so that they count as shared use paths that serve both pedestrian and bicycle facilities as part of the FDOT network of facilities. And also, looking at how can we try to work with the design that's so far along now, but come up with some different options and that could cater to future transit, future bike share, that sort of thing, being more specific in terms of multimodality of the location.
Thank you. And I do appreciate the continued conversation and focus on mobility specifically in this general area. Thank you.
Commissioner Warren.
Mr. Rook, I'd just like to say I appreciate your confidence and your optimism, and I share that optimism that the architect and this great team will bring forward some great options for us to consider. I think that's a wonderful idea, to have options so that we don't have any more delays. I'm looking forward to this project moving forward. I'm welcoming it to our city, so thank you.
Any other questions or comments on this item? All right, hearing none, I'll entertain a motion.
Mayor, I move to approve resolution number 21-69.
It's been moved. Is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved and second. Discussion. Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, like sign. Hearing no opposition, motion carries unanimously. Since that is the only item on this agenda, this meeting is adjourned, and we will reconvene as a city commission at 5. Thank you.